Today, my guest is Andrea Sparks. I feel very honored to have Andrea with us today. She is the director of the governor's sex trafficking team. This team leads collaborative efforts to build sustainable capacity, enhance expertise, promote policies to prevent child exploitation, also to help survivors heal, thrive, justice. Since Andrea was appointed by the governor 3 years ago, Texas has become a national leader in developing trauma-informed coordinated care and services for child and young adult victims of trafficking. In addition to building a continuum of survivor care in Texas, Andrea leads the team's efforts to prevent exploitation and to support the criminal justice system and holding exploiters accountable. After graduating from the University of Texas Law School and serving as staff attorney for the Texas Supreme Court, Andrea represented children and families in child protective cases. She then served as the director of public affairs for the Texas CASA and then the executive director of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children's Texas Regional Office. Very honored to have you with me here today, Andrea. Thanks for joining me.
Of course, I'm so glad to be here and honored to be with you all. And you know, it's kind of one of those silver linings that we can be together now that we have all this new technology that we're getting used to using. So I'm always looking for silver linings these days.
Yes, absolutely. We have to kind of find the positive wherever we can, for sure. So tell us about the governor's child sex trafficking team.
Sure. So we were created by the legislature, actually, about 5 years ago, and I was appointed 4 years ago, a little over 4 years now, to build this team and really to do several things, to work on preventing child sex trafficking, to work on identifying victims who were going unseen, to work on recovering those victims instead of punishing them or detaining them, really giving them the trauma-informed services they need, to help build capacity for their short and long-term care, and then of course to help bring justice for them. So we've been busy since getting started. I've got a team of 10. Including a newish member from South Texas. Your South Texas Regional Administrator, which covers your area, is Christian Benavides out of Laredo, and we're excited to have him. His job is to help build that continuum of care in South Texas, get care coordination going, and really be the face of the governor's office down there. And Christian comes from a long career in DSPS and has a lot of experience, not only with child protection, but with drug court and working with the judges in Laredo to get that going, as well as some trafficking cases. So we're really excited to have him be your regional administrator down there.
Well, that's awesome. I knew that we were going to be signed in a regional administrator for our area, and so very excited to have such a qualified person in our area doing that. That's great. I look forward to meeting him. So what are some of the initiatives you all have implemented to help survivors?
Yeah, so the first sort of 6 to 8 months was really just trying to learn as much as possible about what was already out there. There's so many good things going. I mean, you guys have your task force in Corpus, and other communities have similar efforts that are already going on, and we didn't want to dismantle any of that or ignore any of that. We wanted to build upon it and, if possible, strengthen those efforts. So we had a lot of focus groups. I believe you were part of those initially, where we learned as much as we could from law enforcement, from service providers, from survivors, from medical professionals, any kind of first responders, to learn what was already happening in the space and where they thought the gaps were. And it was very, very clear that the biggest gap people felt existed was a place for these kids to go. That they felt like right now, back then, that most of these kids were being placed in juvenile detention, and the juvenile justice system owned this issue more than any other system. and that was not an appropriate place for them to be. Now, granted, we have lots of great juvenile probation officers and programs that are working hard for these kids, and we don't want to discount that. But basically, not every kid who is trafficked needs to be in the juvenile justice system just because they are exploited. So we set about really learning what best practices were as far as placements and services and places kids could go, whether that be in the middle of the night or for long-term care, and came to put out a request for applications for a couple of different kinds of services. So basically, we were looking for specialized foster care homes for these kids. We were looking for emergency shelter, and we were looking for drop-in centers. We've since expanded that to residential treatment and group care. And so I'm so happy at the response that we've gotten from the community and those who are already doing the work out there. We've had numerous grant applications funded since then, and we're looking at doing a whole, in fact, we're right in the middle of finalizing our grant recommendations that would start in October. And we have numerous services around the state. So we've got, I believe, 3 emergency shelters, looking for 4 and 5 very soon. We've got long-term care centers. We've got specialized foster care homes. We've got drop-in centers. And that's really where we've focused the last 4 years, is building that capacity for victim services. The thing that we're doing now is we're going to continue that effort, but we're also paying a little bit more attention to prevention and going upstream and saying, where are these kids coming from? How can we prevent them from being exploited in the first place? And then we're also, I just got back from a 2-hour meeting with the Attorney General's new human trafficking director over there, the prosecutor, and we're really going to be focusing on bringing justice as well.
That's awesome. Yes, part of what we do, of course, is education, and really working to get into schools. Had a great meeting with Ashley about a week ago. Yes, who has developed that phenomenal. Ashley with 3 Strands has developed that phenomenal curriculum, and we're working to figure out how we are going to work together. So very excited about that, because, of course, if we can prevent this from happening is really the goal for all of us.
Another silver lining there, honestly, because that whole Protect program that you're mentioning was something that we had given them a grant to do in 2 school districts, and then COVID hit, and they decided to offer it for free to every school district in Texas, as well as all agencies that care for these kids. So we've got over 300 different users around the state really using that program for prevention.
That's awesome, because our hope is to get just get as many schools to buy in and implement the program as possible. So we're working on covering the South Texas area for them to definitely get buy-in for that, because it's a phenomenal program.
That's great.
So we all know that is an important piece, getting this information to our kids. So we kind of talked about some of the accomplishments of your team. So let me ask you, what has been the biggest hurdle that you have seen in fighting this crime?
Wow. So as far as fighting the crime and prosecuting, investigating it, or so obviously this is a very hidden crime, and the majority of young victims don't even realize that they're being victimized. This exploiter is their boyfriend, their father, their whoever, someone their love of their life many times. We also are seeing a spike in familial trafficking. Not sure if it's due to the economy and what's happening there, and people losing their jobs and having to pay off drug debt or whatever. But we're seeing mothers trade in their children for $50 of drug debt, young children. So I think the biggest struggle is really identifying those victims, and even when they're not willing or cannot or not able to identify themselves as victims. And what we've done to help with that is roll out the screening tool called the Commercial Sexual Exploitation Identification Tool, or the CSIT tool. And this is being rolled out statewide. And what it does is it allows anyone who interacts with a child or has a child on their caseload or has information about a child, including schools, um, take the information they have about that child, and within 5 to 7 minutes, there's a score that's produced by using the information they have. And if that score is in the range of clear concern for exploitation, then we are saying, we are presuming that they're a victim. We can't wait for them to outcry. We can't wait for us to get confirmation through investigation or anything like that, because these kids are being victimized at a young age before anybody sees it. So we presume that they're a victim for the point of them getting services, and then they can be appointed an advocate, and they can get into care coordination where that exists within our CACs. And then later on down the line, many, many times, as they build trust and rapport with their service providers, whether it be, their foster mom or their advocate, more information comes out and we're able to actually go and investigate and prosecute the case. That to me is the biggest struggle, is that we are not seeing this crime. People still think it doesn't happen in their communities, in their schools, and it absolutely does. So understanding that it's not a kid who's going to walk up to you and say, help me, I'm being trafficked. It's many, many times very subtle signs. The other thing is that with, especially now, there's just so many needs, right, in our communities. So law enforcement is getting pulled off to do other things, whether that is responding to COVID or responding to the civil discourse unrest we're having about police brutality and racism, or whatever it is. This is, and honestly, the economies of these law enforcement agencies and their budgets. So like, we need to keep this forefront and center, because now more than ever, our children and others are vulnerable and they are at risk. And we have not seen a decline in demand at all. In fact, we've seen it actually spike in a lot of our communities. And we know that when you have youth who are aging out of the foster care system or who are homeless and can't get their needs met, especially now when there's a lack of jobs and a lack of a way to connect with others at school or other safe places, we know that they're even in more risk of being exploited. So we need everyone's help to keep this top of mind. And let's not forget that, yes, we are very concerned about COVID. Yes, we are very concerned about what's happening to people who are sick and our healthcare providers, but we have to keep our kids top of mind.
Absolutely, absolutely. I know you kind of mentioned the homeless youth and youth aging out of foster care. Something talked a little bit. Have you all had some experience with just the increased number of children that are online doing schoolwork, and sometimes their devices that maybe the school has provided are not properly protected or protecting them from predators? Which, I mean, predators are notorious for being able to slide in back doors that, what nobody's seen before. And so, it's kind of tricky business. What about that aspect?
You're right on the money. We're hearing so much about that. And I think that's part of the reason that Protect offered to give their program for free. Just everybody, it's like all hands on deck. When we have all these kids spending hours online, and parents have to work, so they're not, observing what they're doing. Predators know that. We've gotten wind of them giving each other advice on how to best approach kids online, and get them to send pictures. There's been an increase in online enticement, sextortion. I know that NCMEC said at some point in April, they were 30% more cyber tips than the previous year. Now, some of that's just normal growth in this as technology grows, but that's a big spike. And so we're very, very concerned about what's happening. I just heard a local story in my school district. They were using Google Docs to do some homework together as a class. This was in May, and someone somehow got in there and flashed, pornography in front of all these kids. And it's just, how do they get in a Google Doc, So if there's a will, there's a way. And with what we're seeing is that predators who don't have the access to the victims that they would normally have because of COVID are reaching out in different ways. So it's really high alert right now.
For those that are with us today, well, one, let me say, if you have questions, please feel free to type it in the chat. We'll get to them here shortly. But what would you say that parents out there could do as far as helping to curtail their children from, becoming exposed to this or protecting them online in these ways?
Well, one, I think limiting screen time is always a good idea. I mean, if I look back on it, I'm like, if I would have just waited another year or two to give them those phones. But two, I think just telling your kids, like legit telling your kids and then sticking with this. If something makes you feel sad, scared, confused, come tell me. You will not be in trouble. Let's say that, and I know it's hard to say this to teens, to have teens myself, and they're like, oh, mom, they roll their eyes. But seriously, there are a lot of predators out there. They're on Xbox. They're on all the games, and they're now breaking into homework. And so they're going to be trying to send you messages or pictures that are inappropriate. They're going to be trying to befriend you, and just know that even if you are tricked at first and you send them something, let's say you send a picture and it gets scary, come to me, let me know. You will not be in trouble. And then at that point, you've got to report it to the cyber tip line at NCMEC. I would say, just keep that line of communication open with your kids. Remind them, don't let them have their phones at night. Maybe have them charge them in your room. And just do the normal things that a parent would do over anything that can cause danger. Have those conversations with the kid and keep those lines of communication open.
Yeah, that's great advice. Great advice. I do. Yeah, just making it okay that for your kids to come to you in the situation is so important that that really we verbalize that.
Yeah.
We may think it, but we need to verbalize it to them. And if you would, do you by chance have that cyber tip number?
Yeah. So it's missingkids.org. If you go there, that's the NCMEC website, and it's right on there. You can either call it in or you can type it in via message. And what they'll do, you might not hear right away, but what they'll do is then they will put that into their system, and they have algorithms and all kinds of things that can detect whether this is similar to something they already have. And you just never know whether that one little tip can make a case. Definitely. NCMEC can also provide parents advice. So they have a family advocacy division. And if you're really struggling with something that happened in your family, or let's say your kid did send a sext to another kid and you're wondering what to do about it, they can talk you through that and really offer a lot of support.
That's great. And just for those that may not realize NCMEC, when she's saying NCMEC, she's referring to the National Center on Sexual Exploitation.
Yeah, missing and exploited children.
I'm sorry, missing and exploited children.
Yep.
I knew as I was saying that, I was like, wait, no, that's the other folks.
Yeah. So many acronyms.
Huh?
So many acronyms.
Right. So we talked about some of the challenges. Where do you feel like the state is really excelling in fighting trafficking?
Wow. So we have started funding innovative projects out of district attorneys and law enforcement agencies. And what we're doing is learning from those. Like, these are pilots that try something new. And I feel like that's really been successful. We have learned, for example, that in Houston, of the 18 to 24-year-olds who are arrested for prostitution, 70% of them actually are being trafficked. And so that's a huge takeaway that has changed the way they approach prostitution and trafficking, to understand, again, recognizing these victims as victims. And so that we're learning a lot from that. We also, the See It tool is recognizing more kids, and we're developing care coordination, which is basically a multidisciplinary team centered around the children's advocacy centers who already have the authority to share information about children to their team under Chapter 264 of the Family Code. So they already have the mandate, the funding, the infrastructure to staff these cases for investigations and prosecution purposes. And this is adding on that care coordination piece, which is really like, okay, how are we going to help this victim get through this process and long-term get what they need to heal and thrive? And so we've got now care coordination teams set up in Houston and the surrounding counties, Dallas, Fort Worth, San Antonio, and New Braunfels. Next, we're looking at very, very soon, Collin County, Montgomery County, Lubbock, and I believe Waco and Bell County. So they're coming, and this is just a great way that you have that multidisciplinary kind of lens on it. So you've got, the SANE nurse, you've got the DFPS worker, you've got the advocate, you've got law enforcement, prosecutor, the foster care mom, whoever it is, coming together to staff this case to make sure that we're doing everything we can in the child's best interest and really holding each other accountable for that trauma-informed response. So that's we're really excited about that. We've had a little over 500 kids come through care coordination so far, and the vast majority of them are getting their needs met. Their parents or DFPS, if they're the guardian, are signing off on those plans of service. They're staying put in their placements. We do understand that this is a cyclical healing and relapse is part of it, but it's working. And so we're just super excited with our progress with the CACs for getting that done.
That's awesome. That's very exciting. I hadn't heard a lot about that. It's not quite to our area yet. I know it'll be coming, so I really look forward to that, because a continuum of care and that coordinated response is just so very important. We kind of get a little of that with our task force, as you're aware of, but I know that we can just get better as that comes our way. So very exciting. So let me ask this. So as a refuge, we are a refuge provider, obviously, for child survivors. What do we need to concentrate on the most, do you think, from your perspective?
So we've learned a lot of lessons in the last 4 years. And one of the hardest was that we can't just throw money at this thing. It's not like giving a bunch of grants and it's going to all work out. We need the right people who are willing to learn and continuously improve to take care of our kids. We've worked with providers who have literally provided residential treatment and foster care for 100 years and are still struggling with this population now. And we ask them why. You've probably already served a ton of trafficking victims. Why is this so hard? And what we've heard is that in the past, when you have a victim of trafficking and they're unidentified, you're not really addressing that part of their trauma. So you're never dealing with it. And you're dealing with their behaviors only, and you're not addressing the underlying trauma. Once you pull that Band-Aid off and you are addressing that underlying trauma, it gets really difficult. But we know that that's the work we have to do in order for them to heal and grow and thrive. And so, I would say it is like child abuse, and you treat it like child abuse and sexual assault and those things that we're, used to treating in our state. But this layer of just extreme shame and self-blame is a whole different thing. And so to understand that, and to really have the tools to deal with that, and the self-awareness to say, I don't think we did a great job with this child. I think we need to do better next time. Let's talk about this. Let's do a case autopsy and see where we went wrong, is huge. We have been rolling out models to help our providers do that. So we're big believers in TBRI, trust-based relational intervention. We have seen huge success with TBRI and these kinds of victims, and also with motivational interviewing, which we're doing training for that around the state as well. That is the biggest lesson learned, and what we really need our providers to take in and say, yes, we don't have all the answers, but we're going to try, and we're going to keep learning and keep getting better.
Yeah, I could see, kind of a newcomer on the scene. I think that's something that is probably difficult for those agencies that have been in the child care world for, 50 or 60 years, is they aren't used to that sort of approach of being victim centered, and sort of really giving them a say in their life, where it's kind of been they're used to, like, this is what you do when you're in this program, as opposed to what's going to work best for you.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah, that's huge. We have learned, of course, in this, in this business and working with survivors, and it's so empowering to them and so gratifying to see them be able to overcome things, and kind of take ownership of their life that really they had never had before, and make decisions, and then learn. Some are good and some are bad, but then they learn and see them move on from there. It's it makes that hard work worth it all, of course.
Absolutely. And that empowerment approach is so important, like you said, because if they're invested, if they get to make some of the decisions, they're going to be more invested and they're going to have more success.
Yes, absolutely. It's kind of that learning to adult.
Yes. Yes.
Well, what else could you share with us today?
Well, I just wanted to make sure that everybody knows we have a monthly webinar. It's actually going to start at 1 o'clock today. It's today. And it is on the Texas Rural Legal Aid Services for youth. So they provide free legal services for youth who are aging out of foster care, who've aged out of foster care, as well as trafficking victims across the state. And if you want, I can send you that link right after this. You can share it with everybody.
I'd be happy.
You can go to our website at gov.texas.gov/CSTT. I'll send you that as well. And we have a whole bunch of resources there. We have research that we've curated and summarized, so you don't have to read all the big, research papers, but you get the gist of what the research is showing, because we want to keep learning. You'll have like links to all of our different, models and strategies. We've got a roadmap for Texas communities on how to address child sex trafficking, which is there. We've also, the Texas Attorney General's Office and myself and many other state agencies got together over the past year and created a Texas statewide strategic plan, and that has been released. So there's a lot of work going on, and I think what you're doing at your organization, Minta, is just so important, and we can't wait to partner with you to keep doing that and get it going and get it stronger. So that's about it. But I really appreciate you having me on, and hopefully you guys can hop on the webinar if you're interested.
Yeah, I'm glad to know that those aren't just they're for anybody. So we'll be sure to share those as they come out monthly. I have sat through several. They've been, great information, and so absolutely we'll be sharing those more readily now. Let me see, do I have any questions? No? All right. Well, thank you so much for being here today. And I think you did a great job of answering everybody's questions. The work that you and your team, you've really developed an amazing team, for one thing, and the work that you all have done in the past 4 years, I mean, I don't think you've slept. So, maybe a nap.
I got a great team.
But it has been phenomenal, and it's just so exciting to see Texas leading the nation in fighting this crime. And I know that you have been so instrumental in getting Texas to this place. So we just really appreciate you and all of those that are part of your team. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. I appreciate it.
Of course. Good to see you, and good to be with everybody. So hopefully we'll see each other again soon.
There you go. Yes, absolutely. Okay. Take care.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.